Vicky, hi, good to have you with us. How have you been?
Hey, good, Anshu. Thanks so much for having me here. So far, so good.
Uh,
How have you been?
Pretty good, Ricky, pretty good. And I think these have been very exciting times. Well, of
Yeah,
course, Corona has been difficult for I think each one of us,
yeah,
at a personal level, at a professional level. But I think the way we've transitioned as an economy has become just so much more exciting and interesting at many levels, right? We've become an
true,
information first economy, at least in the urban areas,
true,
having a huge, this consumption boom, right? At least aspirationally, we are getting there. Which
true.
is very, very exciting, right? I think with that foundation, and given that the macros get corrected, improve, over a period of time. I think we are going to be in for a massive consumption boom, right? And I think each one of us is possibly excited about that, right? I am, enjoying that position as an observer, right? You're possibly enjoying that as a founder, right? Who's
Right,
already in the D2C space. This
right,
makes this conversation very interesting. But unlike many other conversations where we talk of businesses, where we talk of founders, here we're going to be talking about a community, right? Which is
right,
D2C Insider, and
right,
some amazing work that you've been doing, right? And this phenomenal event that just sort of came together where they, 400 entrepreneurs from the D2C ecosystem in the country would come together,
right,
and a phenomenal community that is getting built in the process, right? I
right,
think India as a market is going to need a lot of that, right?
right,
Given the complexity that we have, that such learnings are very important. You
true,
really cannot institutionalize a lot of this, right? It has
sure,
to be, peer to peer in many ways, right? The learning has
correct.
to sort of happen very organically by forums like D2C Insider, right? So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Right.
But before we do that, Vicky, a quick round of introduction to you. A little bit of a background and an introduction to D2C Insider will be a great starting point, and we take the conversation forward from there.
So this is Veeky Ganguly. I'm a founder of SkinPot. My head's SkinPot Co. Based out of Delhi. We
Right,
started this brand about 6-7 months back, and it's been quite an interesting journey for us. My father is a scientist, and that's how I think it pulled me into kind of delivering high impact products in the market. And I'm really enjoying this space. And we've pivoted as a digital native brand post lockdown. We had other brands in place, personal
right,
care and wellness, but so far it's been a great journey for me and great learning. And for the community, I just got part of the community about a year back. I think Abhishek and Shruti, these guys have done a fabulous job.
right,
Arjun Vaidya, Dr. Vaidya is also one of the founding members of the community. And, hats off to them. They've really kind of got all the doings and the underdogs together under one roof, and they're imparting knowledge and, empowering skill building classes, courses, helps, I think, underdogs like us to scale up faster. So there are a lot of people who were kind of, messaging me while we were kind of, rolling out a registration process.
right,
And, there are a lot of, founders, kept on asking me, which fund do we talk to? There are a lot of these VC funds that are coming. So
right.
I kept on telling them, don't really kind of focus on the funds, go all out and speak to the founders,
Founders,
the
right,
thought leaders, because there's ample of capital, in the market, but there's very few platforms like our D2C Insider, which
right,
actually imparts these knowledge, right, and gets
absolutely,
all these thought leaders together. So I
right,
think it's a great start. I think post COVID, this was the first meet that we had. It's a
sure,
3-year-old community, and it's been growing rapidly year on year. We've seen some amazing names, kind of joining the community. And
right,
in the last 3 years, we have seen a lot of, underdogs who were probably underdogs 3 years back, growing
right,
rapidly, right, and becoming
absolutely,
unicorns. So, but it's a great learning from them, and it was awesome night, I would say, where we hosted
right,
all the big names, and a couple of the founders that I'm personally close to, who
sure.
I've been speaking, or chatting with them online, but never got to meet them physically. So yeah, it was a great
That's
experience.
amazing. That's amazing, Vicky. That's amazing, right? I mean, honestly speaking, I've had the opportunity of knowing Abhishek. I've had the opportunity of knowing Arjun, right? At a personal level,
Yeah,
we've done a couple of sessions with Arjun.
right,
I've been speaking with him, in an offline setting, right? What a phenomenal guy, right? I think I have all the praises for him. The way he is, I think all of you, right? I think he's the more visible face of it, right? He's
right,
leading it from the front, but I think all of you coming together, and I think the way you kind of putting all of this, energy and this intelligence and knowledge hub that you're sort of creating, I think it's just so much more phenomenal, right?
Right.
And it's incredible, right? And I think the most important part is it's a very giving
Yeah.
sort of community, right? It's not being built with a very different agenda or an ulterior sort of
Right.
motive, right? This
Right.
is very, giving it back, right?
Yes.
The DNA, right? Which is
Yeah, and
absolutely
Arjun,
phenomenal.
we had these 4 pointers while he was doing the ice breaking. Before after the ice
Sure.
breaking session, we
Mhm.
started our conference session. So in the keynote, he had these 4 pointers, and the first pointer really kind of something that I really admire that he keeps on doing, and he
Sure.
really means by saying it is
Right.
that give back to the community, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what I've been kind of observing him very closely. In fact,
Right.
this was the first time I met Arjun. We've obviously had these online conversations before,
Right.
but a great guy, and thinks a lot for our community. And like I said, Abhishek and Shruti have done a fabulous job by creating such a platform.
Right.
It helps the startup ecosystem to listen at scale, right? To
Absolutely.
understand what's been happening, to follow up with the trends, and to
Right.
really kind of get advices from the thought leaders.
Interesting. And the other thing is, Vicky, I think, and it becomes pertinent, right, to sort of highlight this, right? I think post 2020, we're essentially becoming a very, very creative sort of an economy, right? I think capital, like you kind of highlighted, right? That's not necessarily the challenge, and I completely agree that it's not really the challenge. I think capital will continue to flow in. We're in an event of liquidity, right? Of course, there are larger macroeconomic concerns, right? In some of the other countries. But I think India is a very inward-looking market, and I think there is adequate amount of capital which is now kind of available. I think what is really required is essentially what you are kind of harping on, is basically building that understanding, right, at a founder's level, at a foundational level within the organization, getting it right, because we're a fragmented market, we're a very, very complicated market, right? Formula A for a certain market will not fit into a different state, for example, right, because of say cultural consumption patterns, habits, legacy carryovers, right? So there are a lot of those complexities, right? I think this becomes sort of to ensure that there is a platform where a lot of this exchange can continue to happen. Capital will eventually flow, right? Capital is a means to a way. It's not a validation or a victory of what you out there to sort of build, right? And I think that's essentially what D2C Insider is all about as a whole. Vicky, we're going to take a step back, right? So before we talk more about the event, how it happened, right? I would love you to, you've given us a flavor in terms of, what is happening, what is not happening, right? But what's the core philosophy of, if you were to put it out in 2 lines, right? What is the core philosophy that you're looking to drive with D2C Insider? Is it capacity building? Is it knowledge sharing? Is it, peer-to-peer networking, learning, engagement? All of it. What is that?
I think it's all of it. I mean, the various phases, these, budding founders are in, and,
Sure.
few of them would need skills to go to the next level. And, few of them would really want to kind of create a network, or, have these skill building, classes. So I think it's all of them. It's a very powerful platform. Right now it's typically very analog for us, so we just typically have our Telegram and WhatsApp group,
Right.
but I think going forward, Abhishek is really very excited at in
Sure.
integrating various technologies,
Right.
to where we can actually kind of channelize or streamline conversations. So
Right.
where a wiki wants to talk to a related thought leader in the personal care
Right.
industry, how does he kind of directly kind of reach that person? So I
Right.
think a lot of thought have been going in behind building this particular community, and a lot of technology that I think Abhishek and his team, and every one of us, our volunteers, are really kind of looking at integrating going forward, because probably today we are sitting on 1,000 members in our community, and
Right.
this is only here to stay and grow, right?
Interesting.
So like I said, the keyword here is how do we listen at scale?
Right.
If tomorrow a new founder comes in or joins in the community,
Right.
how does he kind of make sure that his voice is being heard, or
Right.
his problem is being addressed? I think that's the larger picture that we are looking at right now. But yeah, I mean, it started with a simple WhatsApp group, and
Right.
still very analog, but going forward, I think it's going to be it is today one of the most powerful community, D2C community that
It
we
is.
have in India.
Right.
The aim or the vision probably Abhishek and his team has is to make this the most powerful community in the world.
Very interesting, very interesting, and I think that's a great vision and a cause to sort of champion for and with, right? Vicky, moving into some of the other aspects, right? And I think before we do that, it becomes important to understand. You kind of highlighted that about 1,000 entrepreneurs who are a part of it, right? I'd love to understand what's the spread, right? At what stage are these entrepreneurs? And when you talk of D2C, right? D2C is essentially a horizontal in itself, right? While it's a vertical, it's a horizontal in itself, right? And you have many success, right? You for example are solving for beauty and skincare, for example, right? There are many other players, right? There's a lot of action in food. There's a lot of action. There are newer products that are coming out that are at intersection of fintech and say D2C products, right? So there's a lot of evolution which is happening, right? What's the current construct? Are there what would be the larger percentages, right, across all of these subsets of D2C?
So beauty and personal care is very exciting for me, and I personally see a lot of founders,
right.
Part of this community. But having said that, I think the most interesting space or the most active founders that we have in our community is from the food space, right?
Sure.
Because I keep on seeing a lot of inquiries about FSSI policies and so on and so forth. In terms of how do we do CBT, cross-border trading. What are the licenses that are required, and what I notice and what I observe is that most of them coming out from the food industry, right? And these guys have really built solid brand architect, right? And I really admire the way they position themselves, right? Because that's very important, because everyone in a community is running after the same wallet, right? How do you differentiate yourself, right? So that happens through brand architect. That happens to building a solid consumer experience, right? How fast can the product be available to the doorstep after the consumer actually kind of orders the product? What does the consumer really get after ordering the product, right? And what kind of after sale service do you have? So I think all of it together, I think it's pretty much very interesting to understand that someone has a probably learning from personal care industry that can be probably infused in the food industry, right? So a lot of synergies that you can adopt, and you can also integrate in your
interesting. More and more dialogue, right? I think more and more dialogue, and you never know what gets absorbed, how, where. And gets applied, right? And there are amazing outcomes, right? And I think that's all possible only when you have more and more dialogues. And I think that's essentially what you're really sort of geared towards, and possibly institutionalizing it now with new tech and all of this amazing energy. The post event, I think all of that coming together, right? Vicky, no conversation can really be over without you answered this question in some way, right? But I think I'd love to specifically ask this, right? And I think this is something which requires that a little bit of detailing, a little bit of more of deep diving. Challenges are many, right? Especially when you're operating in a country like India, right? The good part is 2020 has been phenomenal. We're now exposed to just so much more data awareness. I have a 9-year-old daughter. She's so excited about, for example, beauty and cosmetics, right? And I'm sure that she's not the only one. There are many such kids, out there. The beauty is that the information arbitrage or the experience arbitrage is kind of gone away, right? You have this fledgling ecosystem and e-commerce ecosystem which is coming to sort of support many of these brands, right? And their what they want to communicate, the ethos, so on and so forth, right? But the fact of the matter is we are still a very challenging economy, right? Which operates in many pockets, right? There are regionalities, there are cultural baggages, something that I highlighted in the early part of the conversation as well, right? Everything said and done, while D2C is a great space, right? It's not a very easy space to crack, right? Learning for a product A or a category A could be phenomenal in a certain market, might not necessarily be right. This requires a very different kind of an approach, right? While of course dialogues are very important, right? At certain level, institutionalization is also happening. So, for example, in learning, institutionalization is happening, right? What are some of these challenges that you, for example, have experienced firsthand, right? And as a community, how is it that you try to solve it, right? With specific things. I'd love to understand, right? For example, are there workshops that are happening, and there are ABCD workshops that are happening? I'd love to understand that, right? How is that you are kind of preparing this 1,000-strong people, right? And of course, this is possible. You want to grow leaps and bounds, much bigger numbers, because D2C is an era of expression, right? Of individuals, who are extremely. So to my surprise, I've had a lot of friends in my professional career, right, who quit their jobs and enough, right, and now kind of moved into doing these D2C, right, because that has become their way of expressing and a creative outlet of sorts, right, and an impression that they want to sort of leave, on their peers, colleagues, people in general, right. It's becoming that as an avenue. What are some of these challenges? How are you solving it? I'd love to understand. That's very specifically, or is this a work in progress, right? That you're kind of, looking for, solving for. Are they going to be more, say, regional chapters that are going to come up where that those alignments are going to happen there? Because that way you're possibly able to cover those aspects better, right? How all of that is happening, I'd love to understand that.
So I think we've come a long way, and in a lot of ways, I think we've really kind of overcome the startup baby elephant syndrome, right? D2C has come of age, right?
Right.
And it's today. If anyone wants to set up a D2C business, it's pretty easy given the kind of tech that we have around us, right? But I think what is very challenging and what actually kind of puts founders in deep trouble is trying to scale up very fast, right? I think that they have sleepless nights on it, right? I mean, they really don't know what strategy to use, and they really don't know how to analyze data. What I always advise is that how can you keep data at the center of all your decision making, right?
Sure.
So what happens in that is that a lot of these startups, they really don't spend a lot of money on getting the right talents on board.
Right.
They don't get the right talents on board in terms of analyzing their data, because data is pouring in from various sources.
Sure.
How do you come out with a meaningful outcome and have a larger growth impact, right?
Right.
So that, I think, is very important. It's an ongoing process. I think even in our platform, in our community, we do talk about this. It's very important to kind of get the right talents on board at the right time, at the right growth stage. And also what I feel is that what is going through the roof is the acquisition cost, and it's happening because typically of lack of data.
I was just about to come to that.
Yeah, which is happening typically of lack of data analysis, right? So I think understanding your cohort, decoding their behaviorism, and separating them into cohort, and creating a sharp funnel, concentrating on creating those sharp funnels, and spending a lot of time in understanding the delicate dance between data and content. I think that is something
beautifully put.
That is something that we should always kind of look at as founders, and our community is always there. So we have these thought leaders. I mean, they are really very approachable and helpful. So like Arjun Vaidya, right? He's always ready to lend his ears and give you the right kind of advices. So I think it's an ongoing process. We don't have per se, we've not developed these skill courses yet. But last time when I spoke to Abhishek, he was very excited to kind of build these skill courses for the community, and I think it's very important. But we are not really going to be going up to the community and saying that this is what we want to introduce, right? I always use this word called listening at scale. I probably used it 2-3 times in our conversation today. So how can we really kind of listen at scale and look at where the problem lies? What are the founders' problem, and how do we go ahead and solve it, right? And how do we kind of infuse these skill building classes or courses, right? So that is what I feel that it needs to be done. I think second is RTO's return to origin is something that we've been very worried about as founders. Again, as founders, we have sleepless nights. We see that sales are going up, but at the end of the month, when we hit those RTOs, when we punch those RTOs, we see that we probably have 25 to 30% RTOs on total sales, right? So, but having said that, I think the entire ecosystem is maturing, right? New warehouses, opening new warehouses in new location. You have all these companies which are helping you to create these experience where you have 48 hours of delivery, or maybe 1 day of delivery. So I think kind of really going and understanding how to utilize these companies or these platforms at the right time, and getting the right guidance from from our community. I think that is what we are here for. But You know, it's an ongoing process. So we are here to learn, unlearn, and then relearn, right?
Interesting. You know, when I look at D2C as a community, Vicky, there are two very pertinent problems. I think both of which you kind of covered here, right? One is that of content and ability to communicate, right? Because there's just so much clutter, right? How do you differentiate yourselves? I'm sure you know this must be a question that must be, I think, one of the most pertinent questions within the group and the community, right? How do you differentiate yourself? Because you know there are possibly 5 founders within the same community, right, who are doing the same thing. I think beyond a point, differentiation just becomes, you know, so difficult, right? Like I said, there's just so much of noise. You know, and you know, and it's funny when you look at, you know, differentiation as lame as, you know, a brand saying an IIT IIM backed company, right? I mean, what are we trying to sort of do here, right? I mean, you know, at the end of the day, it's about the brilliance of the product, right? It's about solving that problem and not really convincing them, saying that, you know, because we come from a certain pedigree, we're solving for, you know, we're going to be best out there. No, I don't think that's correct, right? I think that's a very shallow way of sort of differentiating yourselves. But you know, it's a very big problem, right? And I think you know, as we go forward, I think this problem is only going to increase. Brands will have to do that advocacy, is how I kind of look at it, in a more meaningful way. I think communication is going to be like a really core part of how you know brands are, you know, put together, right? The construction of these brands.
So I think it's communication and I think it's experience. These are the two things that will really differentiate the winners from the losers, right? So
I agree.
That these are the two things that a brand should really kind of concentrate from a very early stage of their insights.
The other problem that you know, I want to spend you know 2 minutes on is the problem of excessive liquidity. Now, what has happened is that you know, because of this, you know, the volumes kind of growing in 2020 happening, and you know, an event of, like I said, excessive liquidity, right? There's been a lot of money in the market, and people have been looking at you know, at avenues, right? And D2C has had its fair share, right? And that's largely because, you know, people like, you know, us started out something, you know, we had friends and family who came in and sort of backed us up, right? But what's also happened is there are newer models, there are larger models that have come up, right? Uh, Models which are house of brands, right? And there are quite a few that have come up. These are some of these have actually gone on to raise a very large round of capital. Now, what happens in an environment like that? Essentially, everybody's acquiring in the same ecosystem, right? You just about 4-5 ecosystems that you're kind of acquiring on, largely on social, right? Because, like I said, right, the first element is creativity that you want to communicate, and I think this has become so much more easier. Now, the ability for a lot of these larger players to go out and continue to chase the client is just so much more because of the war chest that they have, right? Which is so difficult for, say, a large part of founders who are going to be part of the, say, D2C insider community, right? That makes the overall game very difficult for the smaller guys, right? You know, you kind of mentioned of CACs. One, of course, is misplaced priorities. You're not able to sort of dissect your cohorts very well. But the other is, even if you have done that, right, so has somebody else. They are spending a higher dollar to acquire that customer, right? The engagements are better, where a smaller guy is going to eventually lose out, right? How do you see that as a problem? That's, to me, is not a great problem, right? Because, you know, when D2C happened, right? When 2020 happened and when D2C happened, right? And then there was this amazing momentum that was visible, right? So many players coming up. I at least had the impression that, you know, this is going to be that next area where 100,000, 200,000 entrepreneurs in India are going to come in, right? As soon as these, you know, the supermodels sort of came up, the super layers that came up, right? It's just become so much more difficult for the newer guys, right? Who are sitting with just about, say, a couple of lakhs in the bank, right? Who possibly want to get it out, but might not be able to make it large, right? And that's largely because of this excessive liquidity and unfortunately the mediums, right? The availability of mediums, right? What's your sense of it? How are you trying to tackle this at a D2C insider level, right? Or is this something that you're trying to sort of figure? There are no clear answers to this that I know for a fact, right? And I don't want to put you in the spot, but I'd love to hear your thoughts, you know, on ensuring that, you know, how do you empower some of these founders to get it right, to sustain, which is so much more important, right? Because this liquidity is not going to be perpetual. The brands are going to kill it for them already. It might just be very difficult sort of a scene. Would love to hear your thoughts on that.
So like I said, you know, I mean, we are all running for the same wallet, right? You know, at the end of the day, you know, your CPC, CTRs is something that, you know, with the KPIs that we kind of keep on monitoring as founders, right?
Right.
Now it's increasing day by day. And obviously Facebook and Instagram are the guys who are actually making most of the money,
Sure.
right, from us. And
Right.
so how I see this going forward is to create communities, create platforms. House of brand, like you said, is something that I'm very excited about.
Sure.
I think if you really create a good community or a platform, and identify your brand evangelists, and
Sure.
let them go out and really kind of go out and give those shout outs, let them go and add more people to the community.
Sure.
That typically reduces your CAC and increases your LTV, right? So
Sure.
I think strategies like these should be implemented at a very early stage,
Interesting.
for the new D2C brands coming into the market.
Very
So
interesting.
once you find out your brand evangelist, don't just concentrate on your product. What you need to really do is evangelize their entire regime, right?
Right.
So how can you really pair up your skincare brand with probably a perfume brand, for
Sure.
example, right?
Very
So
interesting.
it becomes a win-win situation, right?
Right.
You're kind of in the same window, but then at the same time you kind of pumping the consumer with two different brands,
Right.
and also in a way creating that aspiration level that I'm using the skincare, which is
Sure.
probably at $1,000, and this perfume is probably at say $2,000. So it's that kind of aspiration level that you create, and that kind of a brand tonality that you create, which is on the same level, right? So
Interesting.
really going forward, we really need to identify ways of collaborating together,
Sure.
rather than fighting with each other,
Very
and
interesting.
creating these regimes, or understanding the consumer regimes. That's the second thought that I have, apart from building your own community or
Right.
your own platform. And I think third, as a whole, is that taking an omni-channel approach, right? How fast can you go to an omni-channel? We don't really have the right answer. This is something
Sure.
that I've asked a lot of experts.
Right.
When is the right time to go to take the omni-channel route, right? And a lot of people don't have the right answers also, right?
Right.
But for the food industry per se, you have to do it simultaneously, right? You build
Right.
online awareness and you build those offline touch points.
Right.
For a personal care industry, we really don't know. I mean, there are few experts who say, let's do 100 or let's do 50 crores
Right.
online and then go offline.
Right.
There are these oral hygiene brands which are coming to the market right now, which are
Right.
doing pretty well. For them, how do they really scale up online, right? Because
Right.
you're fighting against Colgate, you're fighting against Pepsodent, you're fighting against
Right.
Sensodyne, you're fighting against all these big names, right? When and
And
how
you're fighting against the funded startups, right?
you're
They're
fighting against
essentially
the funded startups. So what is the right time to go omni-channel? I think
right.
to crack that properly and to understand and have a real good sense of which are the geographical locations that are doing good for you,
Sure.
whether you should plug them in those geographical locations, and get a sense of what offline tractions you're getting. So I think these are the three ways that I look at, how we could probably, reduce our CAC and, improve our overall top line, right?
Interesting.
But I think all of them should be done simultaneously. Social media platform is a great platform to create awareness, right?
Sure.
I mean, today, how many of us really kind of reads the newspaper or watches TV, right? So it is not necessarily that you have to kind of have that shop now button there. You
Right.
can create various content which can help consumer understand that we are available offline as well, right?
Right.
So when the consumer goes to an offline channel and when the consumer discovers your product, when the consumer goes ahead and makes those purchases.
Interesting. Vicky, two very, very, very important points and very pertinent points as well, right? Just team up. And second, is basically creating that offline sort of a strategy, right? The way I look at it, I think experiential is going to be just so much more important in this ecosystem, right? I mean, whether you completely go offline or not, right? And you block your working capital, there are like a lot of those plethora of issues there, right? I think that's a very difficult one to sort of crack, and especially for a lot of people who not necessarily come from a background in say FMCG, right? I think it's just too difficult for them to I think, comprehend, and especially early stages, right? And my sense is, I think a good 75-80% of the founders are going to be early stage founders, right? Who are, within the first couple of lakhs, right? From a revenue standpoint, one month on month basis, right? I think you really can't fathom, going offline, right? But I think creating that experiential engagement with your customers, something that you highlighted a couple of times in the conversation, right? Knowing your cohort, right, and dissecting your cohort is just so much more important, and continuing to ensure that the community gets built, right? There's this positive recommendation that goes out, and that's possibly the only way you can stabilize your CACs, right? Otherwise, CACs will continue to behave in a bizarre way, right? Something that you really can't do anything about. Veeky, one more point, right? Now, what is also happening is with now content, right? And and all of us, and like I said, right, we've become at least in the urban areas, we've become a knowledge first economy, right? So anything that comes our way, we kind of tend to search, look it up, build an understanding, and then go and transact, right? Now that is true for, I think, pretty much every industry, right? Be it financial services, be it white goods, be it D2C, right? So it's true for all of these setups. Now, this is a question that I've had for many people, right? And this becomes very important in a D2C setting, right? And that's largely because D2C there's a very strong backend of manufacturing that you require for a great D2C experience, right? Be it food, be it cosmetics, be it any of these subsets, right? Now, the thing is that because the exposure is now not dependent on a physical interaction with that product, it is largely happening in a digital format. The aspiration is aspiration is very quick. The reaction is also very quick, right? There's no lag whatsoever. I don't need to hop onto a cab and get to a certain place and then kind of experience, right? Like I want it on the fly. Now, the thing is, you highlighted something about data, right? Which is just so much more important. What is happening is that my consumption of content, or anybody's consumption of content today, is not limited to, say, just an inward looking content, right? Now that content that you're consuming is global in nature, right? Something which is possibly true for US, possibly true for Europe. We're kind of consuming all of that content. Now that makes it very, very difficult for a brand to gauge, right? While of course, aspirationally, Veeky and say many other founders in the D2C space could be motivated to, say, replicate those products. You might not have the manufacturing, say, backend to act and react that fast, right? You might have issues on region, supply chain, so many other things, right? My sense is fads are going to fly fast, right? And they're going to be very quick. For a brand in an environment like this, right? And also, I think this is possibly a big problem that, as a community, you'd possibly land up solving, right? That there is going to be less of predictability in the the flight of that product and the absorption of that product by the consumer, right? The preferences are going to change very, very fast, right? What's your sense of it? How do you think that can get or should get prioritized in the process of thinking by the founders? As a community, what does your job become in the process? I'd love to understand that.
So, I mean, you're typically looking at, the Challenges brand probably in US, and you're looking
product
profiles in US, and you're thinking of infusing that in the Indian market, right? Sure. And you're looking at scaling up on that, right? There are two things here. I mean, one is that, we are a growing economy for sure. Right. We are not really a first world country yet. I mean, I hate to say that, but though our aspiration level, our thought process is pretty aligned to the first world country. Sure. But at this point of time, when you go ahead and purchase in something in US, which is probably for $30, there is a gross margin of 85-90% that the brand makes. And when you're selling something for $30 there, I mean, typically you would probably need to sell it for maybe 800 rupees or 600 rupees in India. So you can't really have the same brand quality that you have there, in the same brand quality that you probably kind of have in India. So I think for the founders, it's very important to understand, do a little bit of A/B testing. I mean, that's what I did for 6-7 months. Try to co-create products, right? It's very important to go out and understand. We read a lot of DMs that comes through our handle every day. Sure. We understand where the need gaps are, and we kind of ask them what products do they want from us, and what products formulations do they expect from us. So I think my piece of advice is to really kind of again go back to your consumers, go back to your cohort, understand where the need gaps are, and understand where the white spaces are. And do a lot of, don't be an incumbent company, right? What I would request you or the founders to do is, whoever's listening to this, is to really go ahead and co-create the products. Because today I, as SkinPot Co, might think that I want to launch a face wash, right? I mean, who wants a second face wash in the market, right? I mean, we always make sure that we come out with products that can really stand the test of time, right? We're not going to be going ahead and competing with Patanjali and HULs and P&Gs of the world, right? We really don't have that.
You'll do what they're not doing.
Yeah. So really go ahead and understand where the pain points are. Really not, go ahead and just because, a company or a brand has been successful in US, not necessarily that, it will be replicable here in India. So it takes a little time to understand and develop the product portfolio. We took our own sweet time because we really didn't want to go ahead and rush and raise funds from the market and hit those top lines. We were very careful when we were also building our product portfolio. Also at the same time, what I feel that a lot of founders, a lot of brands, they launch a lot of SKUs, right? Thinking that they would kind of deliver the same kind of volumes. So I think one has to be very careful. I mean, it's what are you building these SKUs for? I mean, are you building it for marketplaces? A lot of brands that I see, they are Me Too brands that are just there on marketplaces. That's just because going crazy on marketplaces or on Google search, they will go ahead and launch those products. Then again, you're wasting your time, your resources, and your money competing with the brands that have already probably scaled up in these in these marketplaces. So again, my request to everyone is really go back to your consumers, talk to them, understand what the requirements are. Go back to the drawing board, understand where your how their feedback kind of fits in your strategy. Does it fit in your strategy, or you just forcefully kind of wanting to introduce those products? So I think that's something that I would really advise everyone.
Interesting.
And from a community perspective, I think what everyone also kind of tries. I mean, again, the thought leaders. Always when someone's really starting up in those categories, and when they go to thought leaders and say that for example, Aman, right, from Board Speakers, I might go up and ask Aman, I want to get into this category, right? You've done so well, I mean, why not? What are the chances that I would fail, right? He started at the right time, he built those right SKUs, he had the right brand architect. So again, my request is, just because some other founder has succeeded, don't really kind of think that you're going to be succeeding there, right? Look at where your core lies, and go ahead and do a lot of research. You get a lot of primary data from the community. You can always come back to the community and ask, and kind of get those support, and then decide, whether whether you should go ahead with it, or you should look at other opportunities in other categories.
Interesting. A lot of very deep dive questions, Veeky, right? We're going to move on to talk of the event, right? A phenomenal event, a spectacular event, which was put together by the community, right? I was talking to Abhishek, right? And he kind of mentioned of how, I was talking to you, right? And how the resources sort of came together. This was not something which possibly would have taken the shape and the size that it did without the community, right? This was not, for example, an event that was done by a federation, by the government, by a media company. This was something which was truly championed by people of the community, right, who wanted to give back. And a spectacular, I mean, I continue to see a lot of posts even today, right, of how spectacular that event was. And I think the brilliance of this was that everybody owned it and how, right? There was no there was no confusion, or like I said, right? I mean, the takeaway was, the focus was to give it back, right? Be a part of a tribe, and I think that's something that happened, right? But I would want you to really talk about what happened on the day, right? Some of the key highlights. You had some amazing speakers, you had spectacular speakers, you had Aman there. Of course, the problems that he's kind of facing and tackling are of a very different nature and size, but he comes from that background, right? It's last 3-4 years where he's seen the climb, right, and the jump. And you had a couple of very other senior other founders, right, who were there, who were sharing experiences. You had amazing panel discussions. Take us through what had happened at the event. I think it'll be phenomenal to sort of how I wish we could have done each part of it separately, but I think it'll be a good start to encapsulate it in one shot, right? And then from there on, we possibly dissect each one of them, divide each one of them, and cover at a later point. But I'd love to hear from you on the event.
Sure. So, Abhishek, Shruti, the founders of the community, they really kind of, I went to them and I told them about, having this meet, right? And it was just a casual conversation which snowballed into such a big event or such a big meet, right? 300 plus founders flying down from various parts of the country. I think even on the day of the event, we had a lot of people coming and just registering on the spot, right? And it was an awesome feeling to see that you felt that it is a community, right? That's the time you feel it, right? All this while we were typically kind of in the digital community, right? But coming and supporting us, we didn't have anyone supporting this. It was all crowdfunded, right? We have all the big names coming and wanting to support it, but we were very clear from day one that we'll crowdfund this and we will execute it, right? So I think we had a lot of founders who had checked into the property. It happened in my farm, so a lot of founders checked into the property in the morning, and the reception itself was buzzing, right? And everyone interacting with each other. And my lips were really touching the ears at that point of time to see that we pulled this off. But I was really scared till the time we didn't finish the event or the meet. I was really scared that we don't in a way screw up things while we are trying to kind of execute things. So registration started at around 4 o'clock. We had our ice baking session. From there, we had the unconference. The keynote was given by Arjun Vaidya. Unconference session, we had some awesome panelists. We had guys from the VC community. We had guys, kind of from the like global bees, like the roll-ups, right? So creating these house of brands, right? And then we had founders like Aman. We had founders like Bharat. So from founders like Varun from Mama. So I think everyone. All the Deons from all interesting categories and right kind of inputs that came out from them. Right kind of, we had taken up questions from before, so we had floated a form and we started collecting the questions. So the panelists knew from before what to address and how to address them. And I think everyone was really kind of it was a 2.5-hour session, right? I think everyone is really very glued to, the panel discussion, and everyone really kind of appreciated, the entire flow of the conference as well. After that, I think 8 o'clock we opened the doors for dinner and drinks, and that's when all the laughs, all the founders getting together, dancing together, and having their food, and
amazing.
And it was a sight to watch for sure.
When I hear you, right, and I think I'm craving for same action. I think everybody who is possibly gonna hear this conversation by the end of it, right, is gonna crave for similar action, right? Everybody wants to be part of a tribe, especially in a market like this, right? And entrepreneurship is a lonely journey, right? I think everybody continues to question that. I think you need a community which is out there to sort of support you in the process, right? There are people you can go back to and have a very honest conversation. I think that is just, it's easier said than done, right? I mean, while we say it very loosely, right? It just is so difficult to get that, support system, ecosystem. And I think that is essentially what you guys are,
So as we speak, I'm sure Abhishek and Shruti are basking in the glory, we're really very happy for, and trust me, they've, founders today get really very happy when few other founders achieve something in their category or achieve some kind of milestone. So I think, I mean, that's the advantage of having such a tribe and such a community.
Veeky, what are the possible 2 takeaways, right? So if you were to, for example, list the 2 takeaways, you are a volunteer in the community, you're also a spokesperson, but you're also a founder, right? As a founder, what are those 2 takeaways that you think was so important, right? Of course, we've covered an entire spectrum of question and answers, right? Possibly this will be repetitive, right? But if you were to very quick bullet points, right? If the two takeaways that you think correct, right, for every entrepreneur in the D2C ecosystem in the country, what would they be?
I think major two takeaways is that as a community, we have seen the kind of strength that this community has,
Right,
and imparting knowledge is core part of our DNA,
right,
and and I also feel that founders who are starting up really don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? I
right,
think we are here, and I think this particular meet assured that
right.
to the underdogs, right? And I think that was for me, I think the biggest satisfaction.
Amazing.
So the second one, I would say that I'm still kind of trying to understand what to say, because there's so many points in my in my head right now. But I think as the thought leaders would really kind of help you understand the growth drivers, and
Right.
help you understand how to scale, how to implement that at scale, and because it's an uphill battle, right, for
Absolutely.
all the founders. So I
Right.
think these are the two learnings that I take away from this meet. And
You know,
founders for the founders. I mean, this actually makes a lot of sense to me. It didn't make a lot of sense to me before, to
right,
be frank, but I think after the meet, I saw the kind of energy, I saw the kind of love, I saw the kind of support
right.
that we have for each other. And it is something that
When you do this in flesh and blood, I think the bonding is very different, and I think that's what you kind of alluding to, in many ways, right? Vicky, my last question, in this conversation, right? What's next? You've had a spectacular event, right? This community has finally come together in a physical format, right? The ecosystem is buzzing with it, right? It's a phenomenal support system that you've created. I think the intent is very clear, right? There are certain answers that are very visible. There are certain answers that will go on to get answered, in the process, right? We are a country with many challenges, right? I think the role of a community becomes very important, and I think the good part is that I think all of you, between you, Abhishek, Shruti, Arjun, and all the other volunteers that are there, right? You're trying to solve it with the most honest approach, right? And I think that's just so brilliant, right? I like one thing that I liked. I actually sort of missed highlighting that, Vicky, is how you, for example, taken up that role of being, say, a mentor for many others, who are now going to be joining the community, right? I think that's just so phenomenal. Sharing your experiences without necessarily having that weight of, uh, glorifying yourselves in the process, right? I think which is just so phenomenal, right? I
I
think
think it's too
it's
early
heartening
for
to
me
see
to
a lot of
become a
work.
mentor, but
I think the role is, and when I say that, I don't mean it like in a wrong way. Not with the affiliation, right? What I essentially mean is from a role standpoint, saying, hand holding somebody, it's like walking that kid, in that school, right? You're possibly in class 4 or 5 grade, right? And then you're walking that kindergarten kid. I think it's just beautiful, right? It's not mentorship. It's
right,
just assistance. It's reassurance that,
right,
listen, there is this ecosystem that exists.
right,
We're there, right? And I think that's
right.
very beautiful about this, right? So what's next, Vicky? What's next?
So I think to answer that question, we really want to go back to the community and ask them what's next, right? What do you want from us? We
Interesting.
don't have an absolute answer for this as of now, but I think we want to. Abhishek always says this. I mean, go back to the community and understand what they want from us. I
Right.
think that's going to be our next step, and we'll keep on doing whatever they want us to do. So yeah, I think we're going to go back to the community and ask the community what exactly they want.
Right.
We really don't want to go and push things to them, right? I mean,
Right.
probably they want to have these pop-up meets. Probably they want us to kind of have more skill-based courses.
Right.
So we really go back and ask the community what they want from us. And
Right.
I think Abhishek is a great leader. I think we'll take the right decisions to kind of take this community forward, right?
I think a lot of that is visible in our conversation, right? I think that focus, that energy, and I think the intensity, right? You're not prescribing something to anybody here. You're just letting people, contribute to the cause, contribute to the idea of a very, strong, supportive, fledgling community, right? I think that is just so much more needed. I wish, this could possibly be a reference for many other communities in many other areas, right? I think we need a lot of this, right? The markets have gotten complex. The bigger guys are becoming bigger in the game. They have a lot more appetite, a lot more capital to sort of survive the onslaught or the change in consumer behavior, right? The younger guys, less capitalized guys, I think are going to have a difficult run, right? And it just becomes so much more important that you have a lot of this sounding board, a lot of this, this packet, right, which you can continuously go back to and very without any inhibition, deliberate and discuss issues. I think it just becomes so much more important, right?
Yeah.
Vicky, this was a phenomenal session, very exhausting session, but an important session. It was a pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Anshu. Thanks a lot.
Looking forward to having you with us much sooner. Thank you so much, Vicky. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Anshu. Have a good day. Cheers.